On June 18th, 1815, one of the most famous battles in history went down. But for the amazing French writer Victor Hugo, this wasn't just some military clash. Nope. It was the day the entire world literally tilted on its axis. So let's dive into the Battle of Waterloo, but through his legendary eyes. I mean, just listen to that. With this one powerful line, Hugo just lifts the whole event way beyond a simple fight between armies. For him, this was a cosmic shift, a moment where the entire future of the 19th century was going to be decided on a single rain-soaked day. You can't get much higher stakes than that. And that's the real question, isn't it? Was it his opponent, the Duke of Wellington? Was it the Prussians showing up? Or was it something else entirely? Hugo lays this all out like a grand mystery, and we're going to follow the clues he left for us in his masterpiece, Les Misérables. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's the morning of the battle. For Napoleon Bonaparte, this was supposed to be it, the glorious final move in his big comeback tour. And you know what? His mood was totally in line with that absolute confidence. Just think about that for a second. This is a guy who'd just been exiled, who had literally everything to lose. And yet, Hugo tells us he had never been more cheerful. He actually spreads a map out on a table, looks over the battlefield where he's about to win, and says to his generals, a beautiful chessboard. He wasn't just confident, he was practically certain. He told his top marshal they had a 90% chance of winning. For Napoleon, this was a done deal. All he had to do was make the moves. But, well, even the best chess master in the world can't control the weather. And that brings us to our first and maybe the most important unexpected character in this whole drama, a simple rainstorm. Hugo literally writes that if it hadn't rained on the night of June 17th, the future of Europe would look completely different. And this wasn't just, a small inconvenience. For a guy like Napoleon, a master of artillery, it was a total disaster. His whole strategy depended on moving his huge cannons around to blast holes in the enemy line. But in this sea of mud, his cannons were basically useless. They were just stuck. So what could he do? He had to wait. That 6 a.m. start time you see? Yeah, that didn't happen. The first French cannon didn't go off till almost noon. And that 5-hour delay, it was a gift-wrapped present for his enemies. That's 5 hours for Wellington's army to dig in and strengthen its defenses. And maybe, more importantly, 5 hours for the Prussian army to march to the rescue. Suddenly, the clock was ticking against Napoleon. So, let's zoom in on the chessboard itself, because the ground held its own secrets. And these were secrets that were about to cost thousands of lives. Hugo had this really simple, kind of brilliant way of explaining the battlefield. Just picture a capital A in your head, okay? At the very top, on the high ground, that's Wellington. At the bottom right foot, that's Napoleon. And, this is the crucial part, at the bottom left foot, there's this fortified farmhouse called Hougoumont. This little spot would become the anchor of the whole defense. Napoleon sent his own brother to take this farm. He thought it'd be a quick, easy job. But instead, it turned into an absolute meat grinder. For 7 hours, French soldiers just threw themselves at the walls. The fighting got so unbelievably brutal that Hugo tells us the farm's well was later used as a mass grave for 300 men. A single, stubborn farm managed to tie down thousands of Napoleon's best soldiers. But, believe it or not, the most dramatic and just terrible moment of the battle, at least in Hugo's telling, was still to come. And it involved the absolute pride of Napoleon's army, his magnificent heavy cavalry. Just try to picture this. 3,500 armored horsemen, a literal sea of steel and muscle, all getting ready to charge up the hill of Mont Saint Jean and just shatter the English army for good. Hugo's description is incredible. He says the charge was like a single living thing, a monster with one soul, just an unstoppable force of nature thundering up this hill. The ground was shaking. It must have been a sight of terrible, awesome beauty. So the cavalry hits the top of the plateau at a full gallop, ready to just crash into the enemy. But right as they get to the ridge, they see something that wasn't on any map. Something that shouldn't have been there. It was a sunken road, a trench, basically, worn deep into the ground over hundreds of years. A hidden chasm. The front ranks of this massive cavalry charge just plunged right into it. The wave of men and horses behind them had no time to stop. They just crashed right on top, crushing everyone, creating this hideous bridge of bodies. In a single instant, the greatest cavalry charge of the era had just collapsed into a pit of death. You'd think that would be the end, but even after all these disasters, the battle was still kind of hanging in the balance. But now, the final act of Hugo's tragedy was about to play out. Late in the afternoon, Napoleon's looking through his telescope, and he sees it, what he's been waiting for all day. A cloud of dust on the horizon. An army is on the move. This is it, he must have thought. This has to be Marshal Grouchy showing up with 30,000 fresh French troops to finish the job. But it wasn't Grouchy. It was Blücher's Prussian army. Remember that 5-hour delay from the rain? Well, it was just enough time for them to get there. So instead of fresh troops for the French, it was a whole new army crashing into Napoleon's side. The great chess player had just been checkmated. So let's pull all these threads together. What's the final verdict here? What or who was really responsible for this unbelievable defeat? I mean, we've got our list of suspects, right? The mud, that stubborn farm, the hidden road, Blücher showing up at the worst possible moment. Hugo makes the case that any one of these things could have been the reason for the defeat. But for Hugo, all those things were just tools, just instruments. The real cause was something much, much bigger. He asks a simple question. Was it even possible for Napoleon to win this battle? And his answer is a roaring no. Not because of Wellington, not because of Blücher, but because of God. And this, right here, is the heart of Hugo's whole argument. Napoleon hadn't just gotten too powerful for the other kings of Europe. He had become too heavy for humanity itself. His sheer size was unbalancing the entire world, and the universe, almost like an act of self-correction, just shrugged him off. And that leaves us with Hugo's final, really haunting question. It's a question that goes way beyond the battlefield of Waterloo and speaks to all of history, really. At what point does a single person become so huge, so dominant, that they actually start to stand in the way of the future? It's a heck of a thought to end on from one of history's great minds.